Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. This is Dr. B from Partner with Legacy, Dr. Selma Bartholomew. Thank you again for joining us for our Legacy Ed News. I'm excited this morning. We have a dynamic educational leader, Jordan Black from Fairfax, Virginia, who's going to be talking with us about the pandemic and its impact on our special education and exceptional learners. And also we're going to be talking about equity and some of the issues around the racial divide and how do we move forward as a country, as a nation, and as a world. As always, please make sure you call a friend. You still have time to invite them to join us for our Legacy Ed News this morning. This is Dr. B, and we have a dynamic calendar planned for you today, but also for the month of May. And so I always like to start off with the news, but first I want to do some celebration things. I want to honor and recognize our teachers. It's Teacher Appreciation Month, and so for our educators who have been teaching and leading and supporting and loving in a crisis, on behalf of our entire Partner with Legacy team, we send you our love and our appreciation. And so my heart goes out to all of our educators and to our partners in East New York, in Jersey City, in Baltimore, in Newburgh, and across those partners that we've been working with. We send you our love as well. I also know that today starts Nurses Appreciation Week. And so I am so thankful. My sister is a nurse, my niece is a nurse. I'm thankful to say that I have a solid line of nurses and those in the medical profession. So we extend our heart and our love to nurses as well today. A special surprise, we're going to be doing a special surprise on Friday. So stay tuned, Friday at 11 a.m. Dr. B and Dr. Mitzan Edmond from Elevation Dental Studio, we have a special surprise planned for our nurses and to really show our support and appreciation. I'm not going to give the surprise away yet, so stay tuned. And so we're happy that you're able to join us this morning. We hope that you are well and continue to stay safe. Before we get a chance to introduce our dynamic educator, Jordan Black, I want to first, get you caught up on some of the news that is happening. First, as you know, New York City schools are open again, and there is a bold plan for summer rising, for summer school for all students. And so the model will look like hopefully having the opportunity to have community partners working alongside teachers to support our students. A special piece in Spain, in the city of Museria in Spain, the teachers have actually, they're holding classes on the beach. Actually on the beach, right? It's amazing pictures. Take a look. I thought about it myself. I said, hey, that's a nice benefit if you're a student in this pandemic, that you get a chance to, put your feet in the sand as well as learn math and science. So kudos to them for thinking out of the box and out of the classroom. Our heart also goes out to the communities and country in Colombia. As you may have noticed, that there has been significant protest and violent protest over the plan to raise taxes as a result of the challenges from COVID. But the deeper issues around poverty, around unemployment, around education, around healthcare is really what fuels, right, most of these protests. And so if you have children in the classroom and families who have their families from Colombia, please, take a watchful eye and extend our love and support to them. I have one other announcement tonight. Go to the website, Theater for the City. I want to make sure I get it right. Let me pull it up on my phone. theaterforthenewcity.net. And my writing coach, kudos to her, I'm giving her a shout out, Gay Wally, has a play that's going to air tonight. It's called Condo Rondo, and it's at 7 p.m. theaterforthenewcity.net. So I'll be there, and I'm hoping to see you there as well. And a final invitation, we want to invite the community to a special event from Newburgh and Large City School District. We've been working with them on their My Brother's Keepers plan. And next Wednesday, May 12th, 12th at 5 p.m. They have a large community convening. So that's the news and getting you caught up. So make sure everybody call your friend, because we're about ready to have a really important and authentic conversation with a really dynamic educator. I'm honored to introduce her, Jordan Black from Fairfax, Virginia, and she's an experienced special education teacher, equity leader, and working alongside her parents, her community, to make it happen, right? To figure out how do we move forward in this, she referred to it as we were planning, talking earlier, she said the double pandemic. And so Jordan, let me give you a moment to introduce yourself to the audience.
Thank you, Dr. B. I'm so excited to be here. As I was telling you, so honored for this opportunity. I am Jordan Black. I teach at Fairfax, and I've been in special education my entire career. And I've also been working really, really hard as an equity leader for these past 3 years. And I'm glad to have the support from my county to kind of further grow in equity and further support those communities of color in Fairfax. So I'm really excited to be here. I also want to say I have to shout out teachers. Happy Teacher Appreciation Week. And you mentioned Nurses Appreciation Week. My mom is a nurse, so I have to shout her out too.
Kudos to mom, right? Thank you to mom, and yeah, for her service as well. And nurses and educators, you know, we're in the same space, and we want to show that partnership and that love. So it's nice that actually that they're both weeks together, but we thank them for the entire year and all that they do selflessly, oftentimes not taking care of their selves, of themselves as well. And also all of the ancillary support staff, right? The LPNs, the techs, all of them who support the work. So much love. So I want to first, our talk today is around the special education and the equity piece, Jordan, but I want to make sure that we have a clear understanding of, you know, what is the definition of a special education learner, because there's a full range. And so I know we've talked about the pandemic on all learners, but to me, this is a population that deserves the attention, and we want to be intentional about that discussion. So first, help our audience understand how would we define a special education learner?
Sure. So I'm so glad that you're asking this question, because when people hear special education, you know, something pops into their mind. So special education students are really any learner with an exceptionality. And I like to call it an exceptionality because we're all unique, right? So this could be anything from, you know, help with reading or things like that, or it could be students that require more significant support. So in classrooms, what does that look like? There could be students that are in the standard curriculum who, you know, just need some help with prompting and things like that, but they're in the standard curriculum. This could also be students who are pulled out into smaller group classes and just need some support with that. Or this could be a fully supportive school where students attend that school and they have support through every class. And the school is kind of designed that way to provide that significant support. So there's a wide range of special education students.
Thank you for that. And I think we're often so much about the one size fits all. And certainly as a country, I know that we've made strides in making education accessible, making buildings accessible as well for those learners with those who need, wheelchair ramps and things like that. We still have a long way to go, people. There's so many schools without elevators, without ramps, without air conditioning, without some of those things that our children need. And I think what I find interesting as well as we kind of have this discussion is, I do think, as you said, Jordan, people have one mindset and they don't understand the range, the range of needs. And so I guess I'd like to talk first about what were your findings in Fairfax, in Virginia, around how did the pandemic impact special education learners? The student first, what was some of the impact that you noticed in your community?
Yeah, for sure. So when, schools were, let out for the pandemic originally in March, I think things were very accommodating. This was new for everybody. Everybody was going through the pandemic together. This is a shared experience, and it continues to be. But schools kind of let grades fall to the wayside, which was very much appropriate for that time. This was something that we don't need to be worrying about grades. There are bigger things that are happening. So that was very much appreciated. So when we started this school year, the 2020-2021 school year, we started virtually in Fairfax, and we understood that this was a learning experience for all of us, for students, for teachers, for all staff. So we eased into things. But when we ramped up a routine or tried to pick up a routine, what I saw personally, and I think what we saw collectively, is that some of these students with exceptional needs or special education learners seem to be falling by the wayside, and not through anything of their own doing. It's just we no longer could provide the same level of support that we were providing when they were in school. So these learners that benefit so much from being in person and having that one-on-one support with a teacher and having access to so many of those things, they no longer had access to that. So when you go from having that immense amount of support to not having that same amount of support, the performance is not going to be the same. So we definitely saw some challenges with some of those students who, again, benefit from some of those immense supports that they would have in person. So we really had to try and be flexible and work together. And we really had to, engage families and do all of those things so that we could support these students the best way that we knew how.
Yeah, I don't think that we were even aware of how, right? How, as you noted, how much support our students were getting, and we actually know that they needed more. And so when everything is now right at home, and kudos to parents, if you don't have a special needs child, and you can certainly, we want to be compassionate, but at the end of the day, you're not in that parent's shoe. And if your child was getting services, 6-7 hours a day, and also a lot of times you have more than one child in the household, and if you're in a small space, and so trying to figure out, how do I make lunch? How do I get you moving if you need, physical therapy and other resources? And so it has absolutely had a tremendous effect. And as educators, we have to continue to be resourceful, and we have to continue, as you mentioned, in terms of just working with families. Do you find in terms of for your earliest learners, and certainly we have, that pre-K, Head Start, elementary, middle, and high school. President Biden has noted that he wants to do universal pre-K for all students. And at the higher end, he's proposing community college to be free for students on that end. But yet still there's kind of a blanket, okay, yeah, universal pre-K for everyone, but what about our special needs students? So for our younger grades, what are some of the challenges that you found around special education learners?
So I want to speak specifically about students in early elementary. So I'm thinking like third grade. I want to talk specifically about them because I know from kindergarten to third grade, you're learning to read. That's what's happening during that time. And then once you go to fourth grade and beyond, you're now reading to learn. So just imagine those students who are around that age experiencing school at this time, where they're on the cusp of, learning to read and then being thrust into reading to learn. I just, can't imagine the impact of that, especially, during this time. I think those students, early education students, need a lot of support because they're really getting a lot of those foundational skills and that have been proven to be difficult to provide, but I know we're all doing our best. But they've been difficult to provide during this time. So I think those students especially really need to be supported. I also want to talk a little bit about students who are entering high school. When you're entering high school, those first 2 years as a 9th grader and 10th grader, I know high school may be different across the country, but in Fairfax, it's 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So when you're entering high school, you're really getting those foundational classes. You're getting your biology, chemistry, And then in 11th and 12th grade, you have a little bit more wiggle room. So these students who are entering 9th grade, even 10th grade, much of their schooling has been in a virtual learning environment.
Yes.
And that's where, again, that foundational learning occurs. So I think we really need to work to support these students, all students, but these students especially who are in these foundational pathways, and they really need that supportive education to so that they can have success as they continue their education. So I really think we need to look at those populations, all populations, but especially those who are getting that kind of foundational education so that they can be successful as they move through the curriculum. So I definitely want to highlight those groups.
And I so agree. And I think especially for, there are some kids we would like them to be able to say you're reading by 3rd grade. So for those who are not aware of the My Brother's Keeper initiative, that is a milestone. And for some kids, it varies. For boys, especially boys of color, it sometimes doesn't necessarily happen until 4th, sometimes even 5th grade, and not because they don't want to read. It's just that there's something about just the text and making those personal text connections and things that may not happen. Their understanding is there. They love to play with words as well. I think what else we discovered about this pandemic is there has been an opening in terms of that recognition of the digital divide, but we have to also see technology as a support. It is not the entire curriculum. So the curriculum is what's written, what's taught, what's assessed. But I think we would like to think, okay, you put a laptop in front of a kid, you put somebody on the other end, everything will be okay. But we learned how to use technology, but I think we absolutely recognize now the value of small group instruction, the value of kids, learning how to play, the value of children, with an educator. And we've certainly been advocating for small class sizes, and certainly COVID has given us that. So everybody wants to go back to the new normal, but not at Partner with Legacy. We like small classrooms, and we want to figure out, right, how do we truly keep and support and fund this, because it will be a difference. I don't want kids who have had this challenge for an entire year, especially our special ed kids, thinking, let's go back to that, not that all of them were in large class sizes to begin with, but how do we create a smaller environment that truly, that truly does work better. And I'm glad you mentioned the high school piece as well, because a lot of kids have not even seen their teacher face to face. In some of our schools, we were finding also that as a result of, for some special education learners, keeping on the mask was very hard. So the transmission and things like that were most of the time up for special education students. I want to talk a little bit about this also. You mentioned this double pandemic and the fact that, right, we're in this state of civil unrest, and we recognize now this need for equity and having discussions with our students. So I wanted to ask first, how are you addressing that in your community in Fairfax? How have you gone about having these courageous conversations with students? And I think it's important to note that people keep thinking it's only conversations with Black and brown kids. This conversation is having to happen with all children. If you don't watch Fox 5 or whatever, I pay attention to all news sources. Mm-hmm. And there's just a level of just kind of people not understanding, right? And so we have to get to some place of understanding. So how have you gone about it in Fairfax within your community as an equity lead?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And it's so important. Equity has always been important. I definitely want to say that equity has always been important. Being culturally responsive has always been important. That's always been something that we needed to address. It's kind of been put at the center of the table within the last year or so. And a lot of things have happened quickly, which I'm definitely appreciative of. So as an equity leader at my school, we think it's extremely important to have conversations. I love how you mentioned courageous conversations. That's what they are. The conversations are not meant to be comfortable because if something is comfortable, growth will not happen. So we definitely engage our staff. I would like to talk maybe in 3 parts: staff, our community, and then students specifically. So we engage our staff in cultural proficiency modules. And while these modules are required by our county, we continue the conversation at my school site. So we read articles together. We have discussion board conversations. We provided a town hall. We've had several town halls. And at those town halls, staff can come and share their concerns. And we always start with these agreements. I'm actually reading Glenn Singleton's Courageous Conversations About Race, so I love to reference that. One of the big things that he states is that we have to accept and expect non-closure. And a lot of times people want answers and they want things to happen right away, but that may not happen right away. So that's kind of how we start our conversations. We encourage people to kind of share how they're feeling, because sharing stories is really how you connect with people and how you grow. So we've had, some cultural proficiency modules where we're talking about race specifically. And I love how the modules are written to specifically address race, and how that kind of shows up in the high school setting, which is where I am. We've also, after the Chauvin verdict, we offered a listening session to our staff. So it was on the fly, but we felt that it was extremely important to open up that conversation with all our staff. I will say at the school site, there is not a huge population of teachers who are teachers of color or Black or Indigenous teachers. So just having that, that can be kind of difficult to navigate. Yes. But we definitely open up the conversation. Like you said, this is not just a conversation for Black people. This is not just a conversation we all need to be engaging in this conversation. And I really just kind of love how we've continued it through the year. It's important that this is not just something that we talk about once a year and to check a box. We're invested in this. So another thing that we've done to kind of engage our community is we've started a social justice club. It's kind of a book club. And through that, we invite staff and parents, and we engage in these conversations monthly. The first book that we read together was How to Be Anti-Racist by Dr. Kendi. And we are now talking through white fragility. So that's a way to kind of engage our parents and staff and get us all on one page. We want to keep that family engagement how we can. Another thing that we do to engage the students is we have a group called CAB Congress, which is really our student equity group, which is awesome to say that we have in a high school. So we have these conversations with them, and this group is a very diverse group. It's made up of students from different backgrounds. So we are having these conversations about race. They also create and curate content related to different cultural groups and different races to share with students as well. So we are having this conversation about race on all fronts. So I'm really excited about that work and that it's so pervasive through our school community.
Those are really great strategies for our principals and our educators who are part of our audience. Thank you for being so very concrete and showing, right, how do you go about having those conversations and keeping race, and also allowing a space for people to be vulnerable and to be able to reflect on where they are in the journey. As a company, we talk about, this is about relationships, and nobody comes into any profession not wanting to be successful. This is Teacher Appreciation Week. I want to say that we, as we work over the years with our educators, I've never met an educator who doesn't want to be in the classroom, but we just need the help and we need the support on how to do it. And I also think that in this conversation, there are things that has happened historically to deny access and opportunity to workspace of people of color, where you may not see a Black male teacher, you may not have those individuals. However, as a coach, I want people to know that color doesn't make you the best teacher in the world, right? That's not what our profession, is. We want diversity in staff because we want to address historical inequities, but we also want to say that this is our profession and we love our profession, and we want to be able to have strategies for people to address the needs of our students, the needs of our special education students, the needs of our, our diverse learners, and how do we go about doing that in a, in a meaningful way. I want to end with a question. I'm mindful of the time. For those who are listening, please make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. We have a dynamic, lineup. We're so thankful to have Jordan Black, equity and special education leader with us. So please make sure you like and subscribe, because Dr. B and Partner with Legacy, we're determined to break the YouTube glass ceiling. So if you don't like it and you don't subscribe, one, it lets us know that you're listening and you are part of the conversation, and that we are bringing you content that you value. So I want to make sure that we continue to bring you the content that makes a difference in thinking and how people go about engaging community. So we're excited to have Jordan with us today, sharing a discussion around the needs of special education learners, and also we're talking equity. I want to go back a second to our special education learners as well, and thinking through policy, right? So it's policy that has allowed mainstream and inclusion. It's policy that has opened up, right? Because it used to be that our special education students were not welcomed in mainstream classrooms, in the standard curriculum. And so as you look at the populations that you work with, Jordan, are there any policies that you think, wow, this would make a difference if the Biden administration could hear it, or if we as parents and community can begin to kind of grapple around it, that would make a significant difference for our special education learners and or their families?
Yeah, so I think for special education in particular, it's in all students, but special education in particular, you have those close connections with the family. I'm a case manager, so I case manage 14 students on my caseload. I have a very close relationship with those families. And I think what we need to continue to look at is the family engagement, but also the least restrictive environment. And that's kind of what you were talking about in terms of where students are placed in terms of their needs, right? We want to look at the least restrictive environment because we want students to be in a place where they are able to thrive, but also where they have that continued level of support. So I'm definitely in favor of continuing to look at those individualized education plans. And I love that we take a look at those yearly, but I also love that anyone is able to call a meeting for those individualized education plans, and we can continue to kind of reflect on where students are and continue to support them. So I'm all for more support and continuing to provide access to these students, to our special education learners. I think they need as much support as we're able to provide them, because we want to support them in a way that they're going to be successful in the long term. So as long as we can do those things and continue to support them in that way, I'm definitely in huge support of that. So I want to continue to just support them the best way that we can.
Yes.
Because that's what they need. I want to say, and I think this is kind of what was mentioned at the beginning, the learning needs are so unique. And I think it's important that we take a look at each individual so we're able to address their unique learning needs.
And well said. And I think that makes a difference because, right, if that's your child, they deserve to have what they need in order to be successful. We didn't touch upon this today, so we're going to have to invite Jordan Black to back to one of our webinars on this. Dr. Skeet, a member of our team, we've been going back and forth about how to have a discussion also about our most vulnerable population, our children who are experiencing who may be homeless and experiencing, right, shifts and movement, because we imagine kids being home, right? That's what everybody's saying, you're home during the pandemic, but it's already an overwhelming situation if you were, homeless and in a shelter and in a place that you weren't safe. And yes, moms who are there have children who have special needs. And the design of those facilities were not designed for, with the least restrictive environment or designed in any way, shape, or form for these children. And it's already a stressful space to begin with. And so now if you are a special needs child, it impacts you so much. And I also do believe that when our children are in these spaces where they are not safe, where they're not sleeping at night, they show up in the classroom in the morning, the teacher thinks, oh, you've got ADD or ADHD or whatever. No, it's really because you didn't sleep last night. So now you've got a label, right? So we need to now think thoughtfully about our policies and look more closely at who our students are. And I love the fact that you mentioned, getting to know our students and having those, those relationships and putting staff in place to reduce the number of cases and caseloads in place. Jordan, as we come to a close for this segment, can you first tell the audience where to find you? Are you on Instagram? Are you on Twitter? How do we find you to continue the conversation with you as we move forward?
Yes, I would love to. And I would love to continue the conversation. I love to have these conversations. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at It's Jordan Black, ITS Jordan, JORDAN, Black as in the color. That is my handle for Instagram and Twitter. So yes, please follow me over there and we can continue to have these conversations.
Thank you, Jordan, and thank you to our audience today for joining us for Legacy Ed News. We look forward to seeing everyone back next Thursday. We have Amber Peters from Ms. P, who's going to be talking about college and career readiness, and we have a full month. We've got the Dr. B show on Sunday, May 18th on diversity and creativity, and we have a special webinar this month on May 19th celebrating the legacy and love of Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz. And so we have planned a dynamic calendar. I want to give a special shout out to a member of my team, to Josh Derlick. Josh is always working behind the scenes to connect with our panel members, doing a lot of the research and the coordinating. And so I want to give him a special shout out and thank you to Josh for making and to helping us make this happen. Jordan, I want to end with this one. It takes courage too. It takes courage too. So an open-ended question as you think about the needs of our special education students and our families, and as we look ahead and coming out of this pandemic and remaining hopeful as well. As a mathematician educator, I want people to know hope requires time. You can't hope for something and think it's going to show up tomorrow. It's nice, right? But this work in special education didn't just start today. It has been a journey to get us to this point. So it takes courage too, as we close out. So what do you feel like it would take courage to?
It takes courage. I want to say two, but I'm trying to put it into one thing.
Go ahead.
Number one, it takes courage to lead, especially as a Black person in the United States. I want to say it takes courage to lead, especially in this journey, and it's going to be a journey, in this journey to provide equity, support equity. So it takes courage to lead. It takes courage to support equity and provide access, especially in a country where there's such a history of oppression and so many groups have been marginalized. So it takes courage to continue to have these courageous conversations.
Thank you, Jordan Black. It's great to connect with you. Once again, you can find her on Instagram. It's Jordan Black. You can find her on Twitter. And we thank the audience as well. Thank you for making time to connect with us this morning and on Thursday mornings for our Legacy Ed News and for your continued love and support. And so we invite you to check out the other things on the channel. Check out our webinars on Malcolm X. Check out our webinars on investing in fatherhood. Thank you, everybody, and look forward to seeing you again. And once again, happy Teacher Appreciation Week, Nurses Appreciation Week. And I forgot, Sunday is Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day. And so sending everyone much love, and please continue to stay safe in this pandemic.